Good evening, everybody. And before we go any further, I feel obligated to say this. Look at me. I'm the captain now. To give you the full glory of this shirt. By the way, Jax, thank you so very much for this. I'm going to have to stand up. I'm the captain. To save time, let's just assume I'm always right.
Don't worry, there'll be a photo in the show notes.
There is a photo in the show notes. Now, you want to show them your shirt? Because 8 feet to my left is the amazing Marguerite.
Hello, everybody. I will be in the chat with you this evening, as always. And there will be a photo of my shirt in the stream notes
Because
as well, which
she
is
has
also from Jackson Z. Thank you very much to my nibblings.
quite the shirt. Thank you so much, both of you. Before we go any further, I'm going to work off the assumption that some of you have seen the news today. I can tell this because I can actually see the chat vibrating slightly. This is going to be a no-news zone. For about the next hour, I want you to do me a favour for you, and it's this. I want you to turn any news feeds you have off. So in addition to the usual self-care that we suggest, make sure you get hydrated, make sure you have a stream snack, pets nearby to cuddle. These stories are kind of terrifying, so if you have a plushie nearby, have them stand ready, get comfortable, all that good stuff. Focus on that. Because for now, we're going to take you somewhere else. It's horrible where the somewhere else is, as anyone who's encountered these stories before will tell you. But it's not here, and that's something. So, first off, welcome everybody. I know we have a lot of folks here from the Isle of Man, from escape artists, from America, from York, and some more and more people from TikTok. And we'll get into TikTok, because I don't think we had the account the last time we did this.
That's right. TikTok is all brand new. I think we might have to have a special shenanigans rundown of TikTok. But first, why don't you let folks know what to expect tonight?
We'll get there. First off, we have our opening monologue, which is where we encourage you to hydrate, get your stream snacks, get comfortable, make sure your pets and or significant others are fed or have a really good scrumpled up bowl of paper. And then we'll get situated. Then after that, we have some more stories for you from the Search and Rescue series. Search and Rescue is one of the kind of epochal cornerstone franchises, for want of a better word, of creepypasta. Creepypasta is internet-generated horror stories, which a lot of the time are done anonymously and exist in a very curious grey area of copyright. Because a lot of the time they're team sports. And the one I've actually got for you in the show notes this week is some details of Slenderman, which is by far the best known creepypasta. So much so that a fan movie was produced starring Doug Jones from Star Trek Discovery as Slenderman.
Doug Jones was in the Slenderman? Of course Doug Jones was in the Slenderman movie.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I might have to watch the Slenderman movie now.
It's on YouTube because it was for a YouTube series.
But I love Doug Jones so very
right?
much. For those of you who don't know, Doug Jones is a legendary creature actor. He's currently playing Captain Saru on Star Trek Discovery, and he was the creature from... Oh god, I only know one way to describe this movie, and it's impolite, so I can't say it. What's the name of the movie he was in where he was the creature, and it was not Abe from... Hellboy.
Fuckable creature from the Black Lagoon.
God damn it, I'm trying not to call it Fucky Fishman movie, but it is the Fucky Fishman movie.
He's also,
that's
of
your
course,
fault. Content warning spoilers.
I regret nothing. That was indeed T. Well done, Pezzy. He's also, of course, best known as Abe in the first two Hellboy movies. The gentleman.
Yes, thank you, Samoka. Shape of Water.
Shape of Water, there we go. The gentleman from the Buffy episode, and so on and so forth. And we found out recently when we saw an interview with him that he wants nothing more than to do a Christmas movie.
He wants to be the awkward neighbor in the horrible Christmas jumper next door. And I love him so much. I want him. I want this for him. Let me see if I can dig up. Because it was from The Well, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
It was an interview with Anson. Let me see if I can dig it up, chat, because it's a fantastic series of interviews with Doug Jones.
Of course, as Eldritch just pointed out, he was the Baron in What We Do in the Shadows as well.
Okay, this is where I awkwardly admit that I've seen like 4 episodes of What We Do in the Shadows over your shoulder.
Oh no, this was the original movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that either. I've only seen 4 episodes with the really cute short guy who's their human, who's the only competent one in the whole group.
Guillermo.
And I know that the lady also voiced what's her name from Assassin's Creed Odyssey?
Cassandra?
Cassandra.
Yes.
Malaka. I know.
Malaka.
She voiced that person. But that's all I've seen. Don't revoke my card, chat. I'm sorry.
So, we're going to get to gushing about Peter Lucas TikTok shortly, but first off, we have our opening monologue for you.
No. Before the opening monologue, we have to thank our fan artist.
We, of course, thank you so much. Before that, we have to thank our frankly magnificent fan artist, who this week is Alexandra Taylor, who brings us the Evil Old Man Brunch Club.
Which is totally going to be a photo op the minute I can get Ben and Kareem and Alistair in the same room.
Kareem actually saw this for the first time, I think, a week ago, and tweeted at Ben and me with, "So, chaps, when we can travel again, are you up for this?" And we were both like, "Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep."
That's totally going to happen. I have a green screen and it travels, and I'm not afraid to use it.
Fantastic. Right. Let's begin with the opening monologue.
Now you could have the opening monologue. Here we go.
This week is from our house band, the magnificent Mr. Nate Crowley, who has returned from his time on the festive mountain and finds he has encountered a problem. Help, I'm stuck playing the same 2 games. Each week on a Friday, RPS news priestess Alice Zero descends from her mountaintop fortress monastery to pose the rest of us a single question. What are we all playing this weekend? It's a simple ask, you might think. A nice way of sharing what we're enjoying with each other and our readers. But not to me. In recent months, I have come to dread this question, as it's always the prompt for a bout of frantic stress. "Oh, crikey," I'll say, all breezy and optimistic. "I've heard good things about Dukes of Manglebum. Might give that a go. Or maybe the new Bungle Tech expansion, since they finally fixed the bungling mechanic." Yeah, sure. Sure, I will. I might as well be Gollum claiming his favourite item of jewellery is a watch. Because I know, just like everyone else knows, that when the working day is over, I will caper back to my dingy games hole and continue to croon over the precious. Or rather, the precious is. Because, despite my every effort to snap out of it, I have been stuck, for months, playing the same 2 games over and over again. Age of Empires 2, and to a lesser extent, Hearthstone. I know it's absurd, and believe me, I know there are other games out there. I have lost count of how many people have rhapsodized Hades to me, for example, or suggested I might join them for a spot of ape legs. On our pre-Christmas podcast, Matthew kindly prescribed me a dose of Desperados 3, like a gentle dad trying to cajole a fussy kid into trying peas. I'd love to play some Desperados. There are so many games I'd like to play, at least in theory, and yet somehow, even in the interminable depths of this pandemic where every night is a night in, I am squandering all my time on nights and inns. Good job, Nate. Strange, really, as I didn't think I was the sort of person to assign much value to the comfort of the familiar. I've barely ever read the same book twice, even with my very favourites. Once is enough, and it's broadly the same with films as well, except Lord of the Rings, which has taken on a sort of ritual significance in the last few years. I'll just break out for a moment here. Nate does this really, really lovely thing where every year he and his wife watch the extended editions of The Lord of the Rings over Christmas and eat exactly what and when the characters do.
They cook for like days. It's glorious.
It's amazing. I suppose games, or at least these games in particular, are a different sort of animal. I don't talk about playing Age of Empires. I talk about playing a big old game with a story. I talk about having a bit of Age of Empires too, like you might have a bit of cheese. Sure, an individual game will have its rhythm, with a beginning, a middle, and a castle drop, etc., and it'll have its own standout moments too. If every match played exactly the same after all, it wouldn't be much fun. But the general package of brain chemicals released will be the same each time, and almost always better than the ones floating around in my brain before I boot it up. Same with Hearthstone, although, to be fair, there is a bit more roaring, "Oh, fuck off!" when faced with yet another jobbing by whichever crazy card combo happens to be being done to death at the time. Even if I'm 90% sure I'll like a new game, I'm 100% sure I'll enjoy one of these 2 old bruisers, and for whatever reason, my head is in a state where such a small difference is enough to keep it tucked into the big cowardly tortoise shell of habit. So many times I brought up the Steam window ready to charge headlong into a brand new world, only for my cursor to trudge donkey-like back towards those old familiar icons on my desktop. The shame is always so quickly drowned by the dreadful faux Scots roar of the innkeeper, after all. Mostly this is a confession and a cry for help, but I suppose there's a legitimate bit of criticism in here too. Because if there is a tangible thought I can identify from that near reflexive moment of nah, won't bother, it's dread. It's the dread of training wheels, tutorials, long unskippable periods of clicking through dialogue under portraits of characters you have no reason to give a shit about yet. First levels where you have to kill a single goblin after doing loads of walking about. Pressing C to crouch before never crouching again. Having to sneak past a single goblin to learn what stealth is. Long-winded explanations of armor systems that I blatantly will not absorb anything from. Just as a quick aside, 160 hours into Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I still have no idea why I have 3 different kinds of damage. I just hit people until they fall over. I know that some games do brilliantly at either racing through this stuff or playing it in such an original way that it's fun itself. But the thing is, I never know which games they're going to be, and when I know that in less than a minute I can be slamming my way through the opening stages of a perfectly executed Scout Rush or a snowballing pirate-themed Battlegrounds run, I'm happy to compromise novelty once again, for the sake of the dependable. And that's how Nate feels this week, folks.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of very big mood in the chat. Though I am one of the people who has been hounding Nate to give Hades a try, because I think it does a very good job of incorporating the kind of learning curve into the gameplay. But now is not the time for new adventures necessarily. I totally get the urge for comfort.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's one of the reasons why I'm continuing to trudge manfully through the Assassin's Creed Odyssey DLC. Although, to be fair, I did discover the big problem I was having with making headway was I hadn't actually installed all of it.
Yeah, Compost Witch points out his follow-up treat was priceless. This article was a big cry of step on my neck and make me play Hades. Exactly that.
We're currently playing The Lost Campfire on the other stream, which is really lovely. It's from the same people who produced No Man's Sky, and it's like they went, this is a really successful, huge procedurally generated universe exploration game. What is the least like this thing we could do next? And headed in that direction. In it, you play an Ember. You play the thing that a soul becomes after it has moved on from a mortal coil. And Embers turn out to be adorable little furry-looking hood-wearing folks who like to take long boats, long parades of boats to the next gateway through which they will go. The only problem is we're starting to discover that one of the core plot mechanics in this world is that birds are assholes, and you are distracted by a bird, and your boat rushes is kind of
except Lewis.
So what?
Except Lewis.
It's not Lewis. Lewis is not an asshole. And you then have to kind of explore this mysterious, almost flotsam community of all these embers and the people who've grown up around them that have just been quietly abandoned and left behind. It's really sweet, and occasionally it's completely heartbreaking, and it has many fiendish puzzles. And
but you have me.
But I have you.
I do the puzzle.
She does the puzzles. I do the walking.
I do the think.
She does the think. I do occasional strongs. Hashtag not Lewis. But yeah, we're doing that on Sundays at the moment, and I was assured when we got it would be about 5.5 hours.
I think we've played it for at least 10, if not 12, at this point.
We're rocking up on 12.
We're just so chatty and slow, but that's okay. Sunday morning stream is very casual, early, laid back. We don't try to push anything.
Marguerite demonstrating perfectly why we're all sticking with her when we realise we're in a movie and the creepy music starts.
Well, I certainly don't recommend you stick around with Alex and Hannah because they just kill all the NPCs and leave the rest of... I've said too much.
Dirty.
The way Hannah Brinken says dirty is
Dirty.
just practically sexual. Bless her. It's so hilarious. Oh, Compost Witch, we will talk about doing the stronk because someone tweeted a photo at Alistair today of
my dog.
This gorgeous chunk square dog with like a cinder block in its mouth.
Like a literal cinder block.
And Alistair tagged me with it saying like, oh, it's like dog goals. And I'm like, he'd do a strunk for you. He's so cute.
Like some dogs pick up sticks, this dog picks up a small house. Like, Dad, throw it.
Speaking of Dad. Okay, honey, we have new people in the chat. You gotta explain our boy here.
I'm just modelling him.
Okay, you've modeled him. Now explain them.
Chungus, for those of you who are brand new and are wondering why I'm waving a jar and a jumper at you, is our sourdough starter. Chungus is also a fashion plate. He has, across the last few months, been Peter Lucas, as he is dressed here, in addition to various characters from A Christmas Carol, including Emil, and just folks in the chat continue to astound us with their creativity for Chungus's wardrobing.
Also known as Marguerite and Alistair currently live in a flat where they can't have pets.
But we can have a sourdough starter.
So we have a sourdough starter who's become a fashion icon and probably has a better wardrobe than I do at this point. I'm not jealous. No. Wendy made me a hat too, so I'm letting it slide.
And me, and it's a great one.
Letting it slide. But yes, that is our Geesty lad. Chungus's pronouns are he and they.
Yes, indeed.
There is a link I will put in the chat once again,
which has all his their measurements,
all their measurements, all their details, including their current partner, whose name is Bob.
Yes.
Tell us about Bob, Alistair.
Bob is the mostly sentient. Yes, Chungus
I'm sorry,
is canonically
that is correct,
a pet.
Wendels. Chungus is now canonically a pet because we've had Autumn put Chungus in the Rusty Quill Pets PowerPoint slide at like 6 a.m. on RQGG. So yeah, technicality.
Which led to Tessa going, "Oh God, I'm so sad. Is that like a jar of ashes of a dog?" And Mike being like, "No, it's just Chungus. It's the sourdough starter."
I love how Mike is still slightly terrified by Chungus.
Because he said it in that inherently Mike way of, "No, it's just Chungus.
Just don't look it in the eyes and it'll be fine. Keep rowing, Tim. Keep rowing."
Okay, Dad. Double boss. Anyway.
TikTok, folks, this is what you can expect. This is the nonsense we get up to.
And speaking of TikTok, what's new with Alistair? This week, I'm on TikTok. That's what's new. Let's move on. No.
Okay, you can't go by that fast. Come on now.
So we finally gave in, and we're now on the TikTok. We're on the Clock app.
Clock app.
We are doing a daily affirmations calendar because we found a terrible, terrible affirmations calendar. And it's Peter Lucas wandering around the Institute, haranguing people, usually Martin right now. That may be getting switched up at some point.
It's a daily calendar, folks. We got 300 more of these suckers to go.
And giving him advice, which is distinctly tinged with how great the lonely is. And it has...
Yeah, we say great. Let me get you a link, chat.
As Beast just pointed out, you are cosplaying your own character. Like, yes, I think this is how we break the Matrix.
Exactly.
Oh, fandering. What a lovely word.
Fandering.
Fandering.
What is fandering, Compose? I don't know that word.
Pandering, but for fans.
Oh yeah, that's totally what this is all about.
Oh, that's like written above the door. You know?
Can we get that in Elvish script somehow?
I believe shit.
Here there be fander? I don't know. We'll have to think of something creative. I'm sure we'll come up with something.
Oh, that's a fantastic idea. Maybe read Elias if you're over the phone while he's in prison. Hello, Elias.
Eldritch, what a wonderful idea.
I know you.
Ben won't hate that at all.
I know you have limited phone time, so right after I'm done reading this chapter of War and Peace to you, here's a little piece of advice.
Well, remember one of the strengths of TikTok is the splices and the duets, so things that people can respond to. So you leaving pauses or speaking as though you are speaking to other characters gives those characters cosplayers fodder. So, okay.
Oh, Beastrogen, you have it absolutely right. I was having so much fun that day. And poor Bryn, who is actually, aside from Alex, I think the only person I've actually played off against in the studio where it's made it to air. Poor Bryn just did such a great job of playing permanently confused doomed Brian. He was so great.
And congratulations to
and
Bryn.
Massive congratulations to Bryn and Autumn.
Are engaged. That is correct. Right around the beginning of the year. Very exciting.
Yes, Peter Lucas's annual speech to the Institute to inspire the team, I think, should also happen, as
what do you mean
Kato has just pointed out.
Well, that's probably as often as Peter can handle, but...
He's going to be so excited when he finds out there's a PA system.
Oh, God.
I never have to leave the office.
That would let me play with effects. Oh, no.
Yes, I do also.
Hi,
like
Logan. How are
Hey, Logan.
you? How's the sweater? Did you ever get the key ring that you needed? I'm sorry, but your reaction was so priceless. I was just like, I have to react to this. I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out.
I am both very sorry and not remotely sorry.
Yeah, and that's half Peter, half Alistair, just so you know.
Anyway, so yeah, TikTok is going incredibly well, and it's a profoundly lovely and welcoming community. And I know we have some folks, hi Logan, again, in tonight from there. So thank you so much for making us feel so welcome.
We're having a really good time with it, and I'm hoping it's going to be the prompt we need. We've talked about setting up maybe a clock app Nook. So we bought a big old green screen and a backdrop a couple of months ago, but we haven't set them up yet because Alistair reads books for lots of awards, and so there are too many books in the house right now. And
You
not
would
a lot
think
of
that's
spares.
impossible. It isn't.
Oh God. But we want to set up like a little photo corner for him with the green screen, so we can do some green screen videos for you guys, because I think you would get a heck of a kick out of that. I know I would anyway.
I think that's about it for what's new, isn't it?
Let's see. No, didn't you have a book out announced this week?
Yes.
By the way, Alistair's actually an author. That's what he does when he's not messing around on the clock app.
Messing around.
Okay, I'm enabling, but let's move swiftly on, shall we?
Yeah, I'm going to be a terrible author and completely forget the title of the thing. There is a flash fiction anthology which has been put together to help raise funds for independent concert venues in the American Midwest, I think. And it's...
Vamp, I'm digging for a link.
Okay. It's been... The editors are two friends of mine, one of whom, Brock Wilbur, we love the shirts, Jax. Thank you so much. One of whom, Brock Wilbur, is one of the co-hosts of Scaring Into the Void, which is one of my favourite podcasts. I'm making a note to put that in the show notes.
Huge success. I got it. That's my job. You're on camera.
Okay, sorry.
Go be talent.
All right, okay, sorry. We'll do it live.
Literally what we're doing.
And basically they wanted stories about concerts, or maybe the last concert you went to, or the last concert ever. And I pulled something out of my head. It's just like 500 words. It's a flash piece. I pulled something out of my head which is very loosely autobiographical, and which involves someone sitting on top of York Minster on the last dawn there will ever be, getting ready to play It's the End of the World as We Know It by R.E.M. very, very loudly.
And was this person perhaps you?
Let's move on.
Uh-huh.
But I turned it in fully expecting them to not go for it. And Brock was like, holy fucking shit, this is amazing. So it's in. Hooray! That will be out sometime towards the end of the month. The Doctor Who book is out now. I know there's been some trouble with shipments to the US. Please be patient with that, because it's horrifying in both directions right now. To give you an example, we got amazing cards made for the Escape Artists folks in the run-up to Christmas, and we got them sent on the 1st of December, and they arrived...
No. They were sent on the 15th of November, and they arrived
2 days ago.
Just, ugh.
Yeah. So I have that. There's also, I've been... You know that thing which sometimes when you follow a writer on Twitter and they're like, here is the thing which is really exciting that I can't talk about yet. And you're like, come on, man! There's a really exciting thing I can't quite talk about yet, which is directly related to something I finished last year, and I'm slowly nailing it down, and I should be able to talk about that very soon, and when I do, I will be talking about it at you quite a lot, so don't worry too much on that score. Thank you, Wendy.
But why don't you talk about the thing you can talk about, which is your Doctor Who book?
Yes, my Doctor Who book is out now. It is part of the Black Archive series. It's the 50th volume, I think, which is appropriate, given that it is about the 50th anniversary story, The Day of the Doctor, which saw the War Doctor, should have been the 9th, I cover that in the book, the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor, thank you, Pezzy, all coming together to fight the Zygons. Except it's actually about much more than that. And what I ended up doing was looking at it as a superstructure through which the then showrunners were able to basically manipulate the entire history of the show and modify its narrative into something which they wanted to do, and which ends up driving in a straight line towards the 13th Doctor. In fact, there was an earlier version of this which was far more about the 13th Doctor as well, because the events of the Timeless Children speak very strongly to Day of the Doctor, and that was one of the things that was kind of messing me up. I was given some steerage on how to deal with that, and there are ongoing conversations about whether or not I'm going to be revisiting that work when the Timeless Children plotline comes into land in a couple of years. I hope I will, because I'm really excited about it. But yeah, that's going really well. And the newsletter fires back up this week, which is good. And I did a good chunk of that today. And I'm also back on podcast host duty. I did some of that today. I need to do a lot more of it tomorrow. And that's about it for me.
Sounds good.
Yes, it does.
Because, you know, it's just been a quiet week.
Just a quiet week.
Okay, cuddle your plushies. Let's quickly move on and talk about horror.
Anyway, let's talk about... Thank you, Uncle Stan. Let's talk about Search and Rescue. Search and Rescue is one of the foundational texts of the Creepypasta series, like I said. It's written by Kerry Hammond. It's actually been very loosely adapted for TV. There was a 4-season show called Channel Zero, which adapted famous pieces of Creepypasta, and Search and Rescue formed the basis for, I believe it was called Butcher's Block, the 3rd season. Now, this is good because there's some really good stuff in there, and it's bad because... unfortunately, it means that Hammond couldn't pursue a full detailed novel of this stuff. However, given that we proceeded through all the stuff that was available at the time, late last year, I find it very interesting that there is now more search and rescue fiction. And what we're going to do...
we'll just take this as happy coincidence.
Yes. What we're going to do this week, and probably next week as well, is walk you through the remaining pieces of it. The basic premise is this. The main character is a search and rescue officer in America's national parks. And the stories themselves are about his very slow realization that he has been trained to ignore things which he should not have been trained to ignore. And that the occasional but persistent horrific deaths he witnesses are very far from natural. I serve you fair warning, as has just come up in the content warning.
Yeah, we need to talk about the content warnings for these stories, because these get grim, folks.
Yeah. Swearing, body horror, descriptions of corpses, and the death of children are all very commonplace in these pieces. And that's why we have shenanigans. Seriously, the 3rd act of each one of these shows is always a couple of pieces of TMA-related shenanigans to lift the mood a little bit. And please don't think this is us coddling you in any way. This is us coddling me. Despite having been the host of a horror podcast for over a decade now... oh, shit, it's over a decade.
I know, honey. You keep realizing it's been over a decade, and... it's the best job you've ever had.
Oh my god. Anyway, despite that being my primary gig right now, I am startlingly credulous when it comes to this stuff. This is why I am not allowed to go to magic shows by myself. I'm not allowed to go to hypnotism shows at all.
Oh, Kato. Oh, Kato. Bust you, troll. All right, chat. For those of you who don't understand why Alistair is laughing hysterically and on the edge of mania at the morning, we have been podcasters since 2005. Serial was released in 2014, which is when people seemed to think podcasts were invented. And every couple of weeks, every month or so, some cheeky fuckwit comes up with an article.
Content warning, American swearing.
Yeah. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
You did that so fast I couldn't put in the baseline. Nicely done. We'll come up with, but since the inception of podcasting, it's Serial. And Alistair and I will post Pacific Rim gifs of each other that say, reset the clock! Yes. And then we will try to lower our blood pressure and go swiftly back on. So...
if you've ever seen Chasing Amy, then there's a very particular scene about halfway through it. It's a scene which includes Jason Lee standing up and, in his best banal white man voice ever, yelling, "But isn't that true?" Yeah.
Okay.
I feel that. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, podcasting. Kato, sir, don't worry at all. That was very, very, very funny. I just that tickled me exactly the way I needed.
Thank you so much for the comment, Wendy. Yes, I don't slur my profanity. I enunciate them clearly like a fucking lady.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. We are watching.
So much. Love her.
We are watching The History of Swearing, starring Nicolas Cage, and it is glorious on Netflix. I totally recommend it. Anyway.
Hey, folks. It is. Yeah, it's only like 20 minutes at a time, and it's so freaking good. So.
Hello, new folks who have just joined us. We are just
Kid Spooky,
about to start.
I believe Kid has stepped across from TikTok.
Fantastic. We are just about to start Search and Rescue, so I'm going to remind everybody again that these stories are dark and they involve death and bodily injury and descriptions of corpses and usually dead children. So if this subject matter doesn't work for you, by all means step away, or if you need to have a cuddly object or person or pet to hand, that is perfectly acceptable.
Not to undercut any of the seriousness of that, but Wendy has just said, "I love you so much, Marguerite. Ditch Misty Captain Birdseye and come do crimes with me."
Wendy, when have I only ever done one thing at once? I can multitask. And also, I totally have to buy you one of those ugly yellow rain slickers.
I would totally wear that.
Full on Captain Fish Stick,
Okay, so here we go.
Oh yes, probably also content warning. Accents. Enjoy.
I promise nothing. Raw manuscript material, part 1. Are you scared easily? That's what my trainer asked me on my first day. I said no, of course not, or I wouldn't be working in the middle of the woods. Apparently that wasn't the right answer, because my trainer just shook his head and asked me again. Are you scared easily? I thought about it, and then said I supposed it depended on what there was to be scared of out here. If we were referring to bears, yes, I was easily scared of a raging animal that's 3 times my size. If we were referring to the nameless threat of monsters and ghosts in the dead of night, and there he stopped me. I guess I'd given him the answer he wanted. He gestured for me to follow, and we started our hike around the main trail of the park. As we walked, we'd stop periodically and point to something. A big tree. 2 years ago, we found a kid lying under this tree, frozen to death during a blizzard. Wandered off, circled back here before we could get to him. We walked a bit further, then took a dog leg off the path to the right until we reached a steep bluff. He pointed. Down there, body of a mother and a newborn. Don't know how they got there. My guess is she wanted to breastfeed. Didn't want to do it on the main path. A mile further, we stopped at a rocky cliff face. He pointed up. Kid disappeared right there where you're standing. We found his body halfway up that cliff a month later. We searched there at least 4 times. Don't know how we got there. We walked for at least 5 miles into the woods. There were so many stories and so many stops that I lost count. I wasn't sure what point he was trying to make. I just nodded, followed along. At the deepest part of the trail, where a very clear marker had been placed to advise that the trail ended, he kept going into the trees. I stepped over obstacles with great care. He knew the area by heart. I asked him where we were going, but he just kept going without looking to see if I was keeping up. I'm not sure how far we walked. Probably a half mile or so when I saw something ahead of us. Through the trees, I could barely make out the right angles of it, and if there's one thing even the least savvy person knows, it's that nature does not make right angles. My trainer led us right to it, but the closer we got, the more unsure his steps became. He stumbled, actually, for the first time since we'd gone off the path, and I got the sense that he was taking us here only because some sense of duty demanded he do it. We came to the clearing where the angled thing was, and as we broke the tree line, I stopped in my tracks, and I just stared. I thought it was a practical joke. I looked at him, but he was staring off to the side, facing away from me. We were quiet, looking at it. It was a staircase. A perfect, brand new staircase. It looked as if it had come from one of the prefabbed development houses you see everywhere these days, to be honest. The carpet was off-white, and it even had a little landing at the bottom, and for a crazy second, I could feel a distinct sense of tilting, as if I couldn't quite deal with what I was seeing, and I remember thinking that was how people who went crazy must feel. As if they're falling, not quickly, but as if guided by something. I shook it off, but I was definitely shaken. I couldn't stand the way we just stood there, as if the stairs were some wild thing that demanded caution. I started to move forward, but my trainer threw his arm out and stopped me. He looked at the stairs, brows furrowed, and he said, very, very quietly, "They're everywhere out here. You'll see them just about every time we go out on a call. It's normal." He looked me in the eyes as he said that, driving home the point. I nodded and looked back at the stairs. I noticed there was no debris on them, no pine needles or animal shit or even dirt. A word popped into my head, and once it got there, I couldn't get rid of it, and that word was wrong. It would make a great story on those alien and Bigfoot websites, I thought. I could see the article, a big one on the front of those black and white magazines in grocery stores that scream about Bat Boy and the lady who married a Yeti. Stairs in the woods, what do they mean? When we get back to the centre, I'm going to give you a couple of forms, and you're going to sign them, even if you don't want this job anymore. You're not going to talk about anything I've told you today. That goes especially for these. You're not going to talk about them. You're not going to take pictures of them. You're not going to go to any newsy type places and tell them how there's weird shit going on out here. You understand me? I nodded, a little perturbed. I'm going to give you a little word of advice, son. You're going to see them. You're going to see them everywhere. And they're never going to look the same, and that's fine. Maybe they're big, maybe they're small, maybe they're falling apart, and maybe they're like these and they are brand new. You probably won't ever see the same ones twice, but supposing you do, it's nothing to worry about. That being said, you are not going to go near them. This right here, this is as close as you are ever going to get. You're not going to touch them or ever go up them. And you sure as hell aren't going to go blabbing around to the visitors about how they might see them, because most of them won't. And if they do, you're just going to send them right to me. He stopped ahead and watched the stairs carefully for a moment. They're normal, son. They've been out here as long as I've been here, and that's a long damn time. We all know about them. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. I know you'll be asking around about them, and that's normal. But you probably won't have a lot of luck talking to anyone who's been here more than a year. And sooner or later, you'll get that way too, and that's assuming you stick around. You'll figure out that they're just something you got to deal with, and you'll find the urge to talk about them is less there, I guess. And then some rookie will come and ask you about it, and you'll just tell them exactly what I'm telling you, that they're normal, and that it is nothing to worry about. I didn't exactly believe him, but I just nodded again. There were too many questions to ask, but one seemed more urgent than the others. Why can't we touch them? I finally asked. What happens if we do? He cleared his throat and shifted. Son, all I can tell you is that a kid once asked me that about a rattlesnake with no venom. I was working for another park, and we had it on display in the animal exhibit. Kid wants to know why we can't hold him. It's got no poison, right? I told the kid that just because that rattler's got no venom doesn't mean he can't bite. I opened the top of the rattler's tank, and I provoked him a little. Snake hisses and lunges at me. Just about gets me. Kids all scream. I put the lid on the tank, and some of the kids are crying. Little boy is staring at me, and I say, You still want to hold them? He looks at me carefully. There's going to be a lot of things out here you're going to see that are going to make you curious. You're going to want to talk about them and figure them out. Go explore them and see what's what. But any time that happens, I want you to think about that rattler, son. Do you understand me? I nod. Now, I'm going to ask you again, Brower. Are you scared easily? I thought about it. I don't know, sir. He nods. That's the right answer. I've missed these.
You've apparently terrified the chat with a wink. And hello to Shitpost. They finished the
Shitpost
B
represent
story book today.
Finished the what, pardon me?
The B movie book.
Excellent.
Chat, I'm getting you a copy now to the A Christmas Carol collection because we finished those last week, Ozzy asked.
Right then. How's everybody doing?
A little more horror as a treat?
This one is marked simply SAR part ... which we're sure is nothing to worry about. This is my favourite time of year. It's not quite spring or winter, it's somewhere in between. It's too wet to camp, too dry to ski. People stay inside. I'm always grateful for that. I've had a lot of people express concern about outdoor sports. It's a fair question. Are we really safe out there? They want advice. How do they keep their loved ones safe? And I tell them I don't know. How do they avoid the stairs? I don't know. I really don't. And it's frustrating to have nothing to offer. If I knew how to keep everyone safe, I'd have solved arguably one of our biggest problems in this country. The only things I can stress are what anyone else does. Don't go alone, carry a GPS locator and phone. Be prepared for anything. There's no pattern for this kind of thing, at least not one that I can see. There's commonalities, sure, but everyone's experience is different. This winter was quiet, mostly, but sometimes we're so overwhelmed it's all we can do to tread water. Here are some of the things I've dealt with in the past. A buddy of mine up at Crater Lake remembers the disappearance of a young man there about 20 years ago. Never found. This past winter he called me to ask for advice in a new, very similar case. Jack B., his wife, and 2 children were snowshoeing on a very, very well-marked trail. He was in the lead, the wife was behind. That's what we know. The wife said he crested a small hill. She lost sight of him for less than a second, and in that time he fell off the face of the earth. His tracks ended in the middle of the trail. There was nowhere for that man to go, and yet, in a literal blink of the eye, he was gone. They've been searching for him again now the snowpack is melting a bit. I'm sure they won't find him. There is something. That area is wrong. It's something about how the wind sounds. About 4 years ago, a new recruit, came to our park to do an internship with one of the senior rangers here. He was a really nice kid, actually. His name was Darren. I think he actually got really lucky, timing-wise. A lady had a diabetic crash, and we had to help get her out of a tricky area. And Darren was so hyped up about it. He was one of those guys, you just know he's going to do great. He's friendly. He loves the job. He's everything you look for in a ranger. But he had a problem with listening. Because Darren was a very devout Catholic who believed that the Lord would save him from any danger, and Darren didn't believe that what we'd seen was anything to be frightened of. The only parts of Darren that we found, 2 years after he vanished during a routine trail walk, were a 1/4-inch thick slice of his left thigh and the cap of his skull. Very early on in my career, I used to have a thing with kids who vanished. It broke me up really badly. I was always The first guy to volunteer. I couldn't stand the thought of another kid growing up alone with that kind of burden on them, that invisible second life. And I had a really good track record. I had this kind of sense that almost always led me in the right direction, so I started getting called out to other parks to help in SAR groups there. One of the ones I brought back was a little girl who was skiing up at a popular resort I was familiar with. I still remember her name, actually. It was Anna. Her dad, John H., was on ski patrol. I'd met him a few times, and he was wrecked by this whole thing. It was familiar. He'd been watching her ski down one of the easier slopes, following along behind. He lost sight of her for just a second, and poof, gone. I happened to be in the area during that time, so of course I went to help him out. By that point, she'd only been gone maybe half the day, so I was confident we'd be able to get her back by nightfall. We split up to cover more ground, and I went into an area that I know is full of really large boulders and cliff faces. Sometimes you find kids in places like that. It was unbelievably eerie that day. The sky was totally overcast, but smoke from a freak fire up north had turned everything a really strange orange colour, and it was dead quiet too, like the animals didn't know they should be awake or asleep. There was something about the light that made the shadows look wrong, like they weren't in the right places, probably a trick of the light, but disorienting as hell, and by pure luck I found her tucked into a tiny little crevice at the foot of a big boulder. I got her out, and it was almost like she'd been drugged. She was missing her shoes and coat, but she was warm, almost hot to the touch. I got her back down to the lodge safe, and they took her to be examined. There wasn't anything in her system. She hadn't been harmed. Oddly, though, she appeared to be suffering from severe dehydration. She'd lost almost 3 pounds. She'd only been gone a few hours. None of it made sense. It was so bizarre that everything got basically swept under the rug in favour of cheerful stories of her return. I reconnected with John a few weeks later to see how she was doing. The first night back, he said she woke up shrieking in the middle of the night and he couldn't comfort her. She kept saying that she didn't want to go back to the orange place. He got her to sleep, and by the next morning, not only did she have no memory of the dream, she had no memory of the event at all. He politely asked that I not call again. I obliged. I do think about her a lot, though. I wonder if she remembers now. My boss woke me up in the middle of the night one summer, and we had to run out to a campground at the edge of the park. He said a woman had called him absolutely frantic, insisting that there was some kind of large animal outside her tent. The cops were on their way, but I'd get there faster. Grabbed my personal gun, headed out to see what was going on. Now, she had set up camp in a pretty isolated area, so I had to park the truck and walk a ways out to her. And on the way there, this smell started to become noticeable, then almost suffocating. It was something primal, musky, angry. It set my teeth on edge and I had my gun ready. Nothing in the forest was moving, so whatever it was predatory. We don't have bears up here, but that's not to say one couldn't have somehow wandered down from up north. As I got closer to her tent, I could see how badly this thing had torn up her camp. Her stove had been thrown up into the trees almost 20 feet. The fire had been stomped out, the coals scattered. One side of her tent was shoved in, and I could see the outline of her inside. I called out, and as I did, something on the other side of the tent moved. I froze, gun cocked, and in the weak light coming from her tent, all I could make out was a huge, bulky shape and 2 white pinpoints where no head should have been. She started to come out of her tent, and I told her to stop. The thing made a loud chuffing sound and suddenly seemed to dissolve and melt into the ground. I fired a round into the trees where it had been, but it was gone. I examined the ground, and the only slight trace of it was singeing of the dirt. It's not the first time I've seen that thing. It is the closest I've ever been or ever want to be. I saw it the first time outside of my house in the middle of summer. It was very late and I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about a little boy who'd gone missing. We hadn't found anything except one of his Power Rangers shoes. And I was at my back door staring out over my backyard, and I was exhausted and on the edge of passing out, but I felt guilty. I didn't deserve rest while that boy was out there. I was staring at nothing, and then something moved at the edge of the lawn, so I noticed and I focused in on my eyes. It looked like a very, very tall deer. I watched it closely. It didn't move. I couldn't tell if it could see me. I bent down to grab my binoculars for a better look, and when I looked up, it was pressed against the glass. It covered over 100 feet in less than 2 seconds, and it was all black, covered in disgusting, rotten-looking fur, and in the middle of its chest were 2 tiny white eyes. It looked right at me, and it wanted me to open the door. It wanted me to come closer. I broke away and ran to the bedroom and locked myself in the bathroom where there are no windows. I heard it tapping on the glass until the sun came up. Sometimes it asked me in my own voice to let it in. I didn't. Not that time anyway. I'm sorry I haven't been around for so long. I had an accident. I had a pretty bad one. I'll talk about it some other time. There's been an outbreak here. It started about 3 weeks ago when the leaves were just turning. Tourists poured in from all over the country. It happens every year. To go camping before the first snow and take pictures. It's our town's last tourist season before everything shuts down for the winter, and we're used to handling the influx of people, but with that many people, of course, you're going to see a big increase in accidents and reports. A lot of the reports are the usuals: bear, Bigfoot, wildcat, serial killer. An equal amount of fires, gunshots, disorderly conduct, basic first aid. I cannot stress enough how mundane most of our days are in terms of unusual events. We can go months, sometimes years, without any really, really huge incidents. But that being said, we seem to be in the middle of an outbreak. In the last 3 weeks, we've had more unusual reports than we have in the past 8 months combined. Maybe it's because people are paying attention now. But isn't it equally possible that people are hysterical? Maybe they just want to see things because they've heard about them and want their own stories to tell. A lot of them are probably just that. This isn't. This is one of the ones that fit into the tiny percent of reports that we can't shelve, we can't dismiss as coincidence, because this one has physical evidence. I got a report about a possible body sighting, and I was dispatched to check it out. The callers were waiting out by the trailhead for me, a mom, her 2 daughters. One of the girls, the taller one, who I'll call MK, was talking about how she instantly recognized the bones as human, and made it clear that they hadn't disturbed anything at all. The shorter one, bright green-haired SK, was quiet. I asked her if she'd seen anything. She seemed visibly upset by the experience, and she did not say much. MK explained that they'd been out hiking to do some scouting. I didn't ask what she meant, so she continued, and clarified that they had been looking for anything unusual. Her mother broke in and assured me that they weren't looking for trouble. They'd heard stories about things going on in the woods and were simply using it as an excuse to get out and do a bit of hiking before winter. SK stayed close to her mother and only nodded in agreement at the appropriate points. At about the half-mile marker, MK pointed off the trail ahead of us. The bone stood out against the oranges and reds of the fallen leaves. Where it had fallen was very, very easy to spot. It was long, it was curved, it was completely clean of any flesh or muscle. A foot away, leading into the trees and away from the path, a slightly larger one, also clean, lay haphazardly on top of a fallen branch. We were careful to skirt around it as we passed. 4 more behind that led into the thicket they described, and tucked up under a bush was the torso. The mother backed away, and SK took her arm and held it tightly. MK knelt beside me and frowned. We inspected it together. Whoever he had been, he had not been toned. Bits of dead leaves and bark were stuck in the thatch of thick chest hair. After a brief survey of the area, we both felt certain the rest of the man wasn't nearby. Nothing had been disturbed. What we had was a segment beginning slightly below the armpits and ending just below the lost rib. That's not all, though. Look. MK got to her feet and retrieved a small branch that she used to lift the flesh with. Doing this, we could peer inside the body cavity to see that it had been hollowed out. The remaining ribs rattled loosely, attached to nothing. The spine was gone. The wound was bloodless and surgical in precision. We inspected the edges, which were impossibly clean. There were no tool marks, no bruising. Aside from the obvious, it wasn't clear what this man had died of. MK began offering her own theories, ranging from specialized equipment to some kind of cold laser, when behind us a small voice piped up. "Why are you lying?" MK turned the stick over in her hands before snapping it and throwing it away. I got to my feet and looked at SK. Her arms still locked around her mother's. They held each other tightly. It was the stairs. That's why we're out here. SK lunged at the trees. That's what this was, right? It's like the hand, that tree. Her eyes were watery and wide. Isn't that what this was? I could feel MK staring at the back of my head. Let's go, I said. We can't be here. SK's face tightened and she turned, leading her mother in a brisk walk back to the path. MK didn't follow. That's it? She called at me. Aren't you calling it in? Let's go, I said again. I could hear her charge up the path and pass me with a furious glance. She passed her sister and mother and beat us back with time to spare. I walked them to the car, leading them carefully away from the station without letting them stop. Before they left, SK turned to me again. I was right, wasn't I? I didn't say anything. She looked at me for a little longer before climbing in the car. She watched me until they were too far for her to see anymore. And there we go.
Good God, what a place to leave that poor little kid. Because you can tell SK is a young kid.
Yeah, of course. And she's seen the truth. And like all young kids, she doesn't understand that sometimes the truth needs to hide.
Oh.
I've missed these. Oh, boy.
You're having fun with this.
I'm having deeply unsettling fun with these. These are fantastic. But you see, now, like I said...
Are we going to shenanigan?
Let's shenanigan.
Do you want to take a little break first? Nah, I think we're good.
Let's push through. I've just lost my feet. Oh no, I'm back.
Oh, and it's changed to Christmas. What happened there?
I think I pressed the shenanigan button.
Okay, why don't you... Hang on a second,
it.
folks. No. Why don't you click on that?
This one?
Hang on a second. Technical difficulties. I mean, technically it's fine, but now I'm offended. Hang on a second.
There we go.
There is your shenanigans. Okay.
So sorry, I broke the internet.
No, you didn't break the internet. Just remind everybody what shenanigans are.
Hey, Ellie. Ow! Sorry. Shenanigans are brain sorbet. It's for relaxing a little bit after the relentless horror. And it is...
Hey Ellie, how you doing?
It's fun. It's TMA fun. It's fandering. It's fandering time.
It is fandering time. Oh, it's like clobbering time.
It's fandering
I'm
time.
totally gonna make an animation of that. I'm gonna write that down.
Fantastic. And the first one we have for you today comes from I Am Number 3, and is a Tumblr post entitled...
There's no title on it, but I'm calling it No Other Way.
No Other Way. Content warning. Accents. Jonah. Oh no. However will I fund my institute? Gertrude. Extortion? Jonah. I guess I have no choice. Gertrude. Using beholding to play the stock market? Jonah. Louder. But to seduce Peter Lucas. After all, Gertrude. Knowing the lottery numbers? Jonah. There is simply no other way.
Read the hashtags at the bottom as well.
Hashtags. Jonah just like, if you're not going to seduce strapping eldritch sailors with dramatic fog powers, what even is the point of cheating death? Hashtag, meanwhile, Peter, embodiment of loneliness Lucas, is probably like, oh, he's witty, charismatic, murderous, and using me for my money. He's perfect. Hashtag, yes, I don't think the eye lets you know things that don't somehow feed it with fear. Hashtag, and. Hashtag, yeah, having the Lucas family involved in the Institute was a valuable alliance for Jonah, but like, that's the boring answer. Hashtag lonely eyes, hashtag the Magnus Archives, hashtag TMA, hashtag humour, hashtag TMA crack, hashtag my post. Yes.
And then,
from Compost Witch, we have Big Wool Coat Aesthetic. And now you understand why Chungus is dressed like he's dressed. Big Wool Coat Aesthetic by Compost Witch. Peter learns to draw down the cold of the lonely at will, largely so that he can wear his heavy wool greatcoat everywhere, even indoors. It's easier not having to decide what to wear. The rest of his closet is filled largely with identical button-downs and slacks. The weight of the wool is a comforting pressure that crucially doesn't involve anything so tawdry as a hug. His greatcoat is bespoke, of course. It wouldn't do to be dragged out of the fog by the unignorable scratching of a tag on the back of his neck. The inside of the right-hand pocket is embroidered, black thread, black fabric, with some Latin that Nathaniel assures him means, on the occasion of your pledge to the Forsaken. Peter likes to run his finger over the stitches, anytime he has to meet people face to face. As Peter grows from a youth to a man and fills out his large frame, he has the coat let out until it can't be any more, and keeps wearing it until it starts to restrict his movements. When the Tundra accepts him as captain, he celebrates with a new greatcoat from the same outfitter, with a few key improvements. Navy blue, rather than black, even heavier weight wool, greased with lanolin on the outside for water repellents, lightly perfumed with clove oil to cover up the resulting sheep smell. He's tempted to give his old coat a burial at sea, but able seaman Thaddeus Dahl saves him much embarrassment and earns a promotion to first mate by pointing out that wool floats. So, Peter consigns the old coat to one of his underbunker compartments, trades his Oxford shoes for steel-toed boots, safety first, and otherwise continues as he has always done, wearing his woolen armour everywhere but the shower. This presents a problem when the Forsaken demands that he travel to Brazil during the monsoon. There's not enough lead time to commission a set of warm weather attire, so Peter spends the voyage driven out of his mind by the unpleasant sensation of store-bought lightweight cotton trousers. He will not wear shorts, soaked with sweat underneath a set of rubberized foul weather gear in the bright yellow. When they make port, Thaddeus Dahl proves his worth once again by finding the least objectionable Hawaiian shirt Peter has ever seen. Solid navy blue with a woven-in pattern of, pineapples, Meanwhile, Peter heads to the business centre of the nearest hotel and faxes an order to his family outfitter in Kent. Linen shirts and trousers, tropical foul weather gear, in black, with that Gore-Tex stuff he's heard about. On the way back from Porto Duitaki, when they sacrifice Sean Kelly to the lonely, Peter personally locks the victim inside the machine room that houses the Tundra's enormous air conditioners. Afterwards, he re-enters his cabin and sighs with almost orgasmic relief at the Arctic blast that greets him. It's finally strong enough to overcome the stifling tropical heat, and he cracks a smile when he notices the best part. The air pouring through the vents is laced with tendrils of fog. And that was inspired by a Twitter conversation with Creatrix Anime.
That's really lovely.
That's
I think we absolutely
gorgeous.
need more sartorial horror writing.
That is gorgeous work, Compost. Well done.
I love the embroidery on the inside of the pocket. What a lovely idea.
It's that tick, that kind of here is a thing where you plant your presence in an uncomfortable situation is one of my favourites. There's a lovely use of it in Star Trek, weirdly, where in Discovery, where Saru becomes captain for the first time and is given some advice that there's a manufacturing defect in the Discovery's command chair, which means there's like a nubbin, basically, on the bottom of one arm, and how the previous captain had rubbed this so much that it had actually been worn flat. And it's that kind of little centering ritual of, this is where I am, this is how I deal with where I am right now. I really dig stuff like that.
If I ever have you, now I want to have a greatcoat made for you with embroidery on the inside. Wow. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
So how's everybody doing?
I think that functioned very, very well as sorbet. I'm not thinking about creepy torsos and weird deer gods anymore.
And unsettling wings.
Yeah, the unsettling wind one was especially like,
Fantastic. Well, we should probably talk about where you can next find us, because there's a couple of different places now. Firstly, we are doing the clock app, the top clocks.
Going to the clock tick.
We're going to the clock tick daily, so there'll be some content there for you every day. And we're learning our way around it. There's a couple of duets, there's a couple of responses, but it's really, really good fun. And as someone who has kind of dabbled their toe in TikTok for about 6 months before jumping in, if you don't want to get it, you can still view content without having an account. You just need to look for it every time. So it is doable. Then on Sunday, we will be continuing our triumphant 5.5 hour / 12-hour playthrough
Of
the
a
last
3 to 5 hour game.
of the last campfire, and then we'll be back here on Wednesday for probably some more search and rescue. We've got another couple of bits and pieces, and then we'll need to work out what we're doing after that, won't we?
Well, babe, I'm yawning.
In the intervening time, of course, this Friday we'll see the publication of the first edition of The Full Lid, my award-nominated pop culture newsletter.
Oh, I'm so proud of you for remembering it's award nominated. And someone in the chat also said Alistair also has a coffee, which he usually doesn't mention, but will be in the wrap-up. Tell
Yes, it
folks
will.
about stream show notes as well.
The stream show notes are a thing which I'm actually kind of working really hard on getting better at. Because for a long time we did this and it was basically just fired into the void. And we were like, bye! And the show notes provided...
And now you've got it stuck in your head, don't you?
The show notes provide added value. There'll be bits of... Basically, there'll be links to all the stuff that we've talked about or that we've read. And or the fan artist at the front as well. But there'll also be some more detail on, in this case, creepypasta. And like I say, I go into some detail about Slenderman and a couple of interesting examples of it. And also some of the stuff that's come up. Like, for example, Scaring Into the Void, like the book which I'm about to do with them, with one half of them, and the MZ Frontalot song, which is weirdly relevant to all of today's discussions.
What? What front song?
I'll tell you.
Okay, we'll put it in the chat.
But yeah, the stream show notes, hashtag stream show notes.
Which is there so that
Show notes.
Marguerite can find them in the future, basically.
Should we put the date on them as well?
Oh, that sounds really complicated.
Let's maybe not do that.
Okay, good.
Okay, cool. That will be going up in the next half hour or so.
I'm already trying to spend all my time figuring out how to properly do captions on TikTok, but, I'm getting there.
Getting there.
I'm getting there.
Oh yeah, big fan of Front. Always liked his stuff.
Oh, I've seen him in concert a couple times.
Yes. So yeah, that's our show for today, and you can please check back in with us on Sunday for more of The Last Campfire, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good one, everybody.
Have a good one, folks, and thank you so much for stopping by.